Welcome to Germany, ladies and gents, for tonight's coverage of the opening round of VSR Phoenix Season 10 live on TRTN. As always, I am Regan Clark. You join us here right at the cusp of the start of a very early qualifying session here at the Nurbugring Nordschleife, a track so unbelievably iconic, the mere mention of its name generates shockwaves in the world of motorsports at large. With very little time to get underway with introductions, we find ourselves thrust very quickly into qualifying today, and with a very short amount of time, mind you, only 20 minutes to play with in the grand scheme of things for a lap in and around the range of about 8 minutes per lap here. Our driver's really not going to have a lot of time to play with today's opening qualifying session. We do find ourselves in a very peculiar spot heading into Season 10, and some of you may be wondering where on earth did Season 9 go, which we were expecting to see the finale round right here today on November 5th. Well, as it turns out, for the changes into Season 10, Season 9 was suspended after round 14 at Alton Park. They brought an early close to the championship to fast-track the process to get GT3s back on the calendar for next season. It gives us now a definitive look at our champions out of Season 9. For the bronze division, it was Shawnee Mac. For the silver division, it was VSR Grizz. And for the gold/overall championship, it was the Blue Frog. We've also seen with new seasons come brand new changes. We see already a bit of a technical fault. We will have to come back to you in just a moment's time. Let's try this again, shall we, folks? Sorry about the technical interruptions there. We were having a little bit of bother getting into the start of today's session. We are back into qualifying here in VSR Phoenix Season 10 Round 1, but let's start from the ground floor. Welcome to tonight's coverage, of course, of Season 10 Round 1 of VSR Phoenix live on TRTN. As always, I am Regan Clark. You join us here as we return to the form of the GT3s after premature cancellation of Season 9. The Porsche Cup era comes to an uneasy close, giving us 3 new division champions, 1 overall for the history books, that being the 61 of the Blue Frog, who now joins the likes of looking through last season's race winners. This is actually last season's champions we want to discuss here, looking back through the likes of drivers like White Doctor, Just Boris and VSR Chris to join the ranks of VSR's growing list of champions in the history of the VSR Phoenix GT Championships. We find ourselves here at the Nurbugring Nordschleife. After minor technical difficulties waylaid the start of the event by a few minutes, we are now firmly into all 170 corners and 15.7 miles of FIA Grade 3, an eye-wateringly large complex, the largest ever dedicated racing track in the world. Gives us the first venue for this championship, and it's definitely been uneasy times that has brought us in to the grand scheme of things here in VSR Phoenix, especially with that cancellation of Season 9 that we saw just to the right-hand side here. Now, among the changes being brought in for Season 10, we also see the removal of the gold, silver and bronze tiering system, with the introduction now of a simplified Pro and Am tiering system. So from 3 divisions come 2 for Season 10. We also see 3 new event types join the roster. We'll be seeing one of them today, with the schedule on the itinerary right now for an hour-and-a-half race here at the Nurbugring Nordschleife. Otherwise, we can see some 45-minute races coming up later on this season, and 2-hour races for a one-off round in the circuit Kyalami. See, these also... The elephant in the room, really, is the return of those GT3s. I think it's been long awaited here on VSR Phoenix. A lot of people were deliberating with the Porsche Cups over the course of that last season. We did just have a little bit of an error with the timers. We'll have to quickly refresh those as well. It's all been a little bit ramshackled here. Hurried along to get the racing back underway for VSR Phoenix. We follow on board at the moment with Indian Goat, but let's sort of get ourselves acclimatized with what the calendar is looking like for this season. Now, this is going to run all the way over from 2025 to 2026, the first of which we're here at the Nurbugring Nordschleife for the first round, and we find ourselves with a 1 hour and 30-minute race, 2 mandatory pit stops and double points up for grabs. We'll be seeing another new event type coming up next Wednesday on November 12th for the first of the 45-minute sprint races with no mandatory pit stops, replacing the double sprint races that were such a prominent feature in the last 2 seasons here on VSR Phoenix. Now, you can see all 7 of these events comprise 2025's itinerary, as we'll be going into the winter break after round 7 at Kyalami, coming back in 2026 for the remaining 5 to comprise a 12-round championship here in Season 10. It's going to be quite an exciting time to see how VSR rebuilds after what was no doubt quite a bit of damage in terms of attendance numbers over the course of Season 9. We can see, though, with the return of the GT3s, that is more than definitely blossoming here in round 1. 21 drivers in attendance for this opening qualifying session, and with very little time to get underway, let's see if we can get on board with the cars out on the forefront of the track here, heading in to the Nordschleife for the first time. We can see a ways up the road already the number 98 of Elite Cassie. We can see with Regent as well. About 90 seconds down the road, he makes his way currently into the Nordschleife section, down through Hoheneichen and towards the Kittelbacher Hohe, currently heading through Hatzenberg. So yeah, it was a bit of an odd one trying to get this one underway, I'll tell you that much for free, and given the length of the session as well, you can definitely expect the drivers to be properly up against it in terms of time constraint. Now, with laps comprising the early 8-minute barrier for a lot of these GT3s today, especially for our drivers, they'll be finding themselves realistically only with about lap or maybe even 2 laps to play with. So this, despite being a double points round, is super heavy emphasis right now on positioning in qualifying. Let's see what they're up against in terms of the statistics. Starting things off with the balance of performance statistics as we stay on board here with Regent and the number 420 Ferrari. Ferrari find themselves as only one of 2 manufacturers in round 1 to be losing weight into this round. So they'll be losing 3 kilos off of the 296 Porsche, best in-house, for an 18 kilo reduction. Then into the positives, a negligible change for McLaren, their 720S gaining only a single kilo for round 1. 3 kilos for Nissan, which has a more prominent feature in this championship compared to the last couple of runnings for GT3. GTR Nismo currently with 3 official signings, both across Pro and Am. Then for Ford, they gained 12 kilos. BMW, the darling child here, it's the Nurbugring Nordschleife, 20 kilos slapped on top of the M4 for this round. Looking into the qualifying predictions, it has White Doctor pitched at pole position. Elite Cassie chasing by only a looking here, 6/10 of a second margin. In fact, 6/10, 600ths and 5,000ths to be precise between those two on the front row. Tyler Vermack predicted third at 8:15.862. Then behind him, Tommy on your screens at the moment is Regent down in 7th for those predictions. Tommy, another fellow Ferrari driver, was predicted at 4th place. VSR Grizz and VSR Chris find themselves 5th and 6th with an 8:23 and 8:24 and 8:25 for Regent on your screens at the moment in the number 420. and that puts him only a couple seconds up the road from VSR Otzi in 8th, VSR Antion predicted at 9th, and VSR Twiglet predicted at the back of that top 10. All pros then in the qualifying predictions. Really not an awful lot of time to get to grips with this circuit, so we're going to cut all the way up here to the number 98. It's Elite Cassie, and this was quite an ambitious sign from Cassie to be moving over towards what appears to be the Ferrari 296. We stay on board at the moment here as we get to show off the brand new graphics as well for Cassie at this time. That's the number 98 Ferrari, sporting the colours of AF Corsa. Looking at where he's at on the track right now, he's made his way out of, just trying to get my grips here, out through Ice Curve into Flansgarten 1, then through to Sprunghurgel in a moment's time here. Actually, he's heading all the way, he's already out through, yeah, by the looks of it, he's out through Sprunghurgel, so he's in through to Flansgarten 2 up towards Schwalbenschwanz. Bear in mind, this is his first flying lap because the drivers for their outlap only have to do a run around the GP circuit, of which we're actually not too far out of on our broadcast schedule over the course of the last week. We've not long left the Nurbugring Grand Prix circuit, so now we get to see the full unadulterated wrath of the Nurbugring complex at large. We head down the Dottinger here with the number 98 of Elite Cassie. We know that Ferrari isn't the greatest for straight line speed, so this could be an area of real vulnerability for Cassie if he is near any other drivers, for example with BMW or Ford, two prominent signs in the sign-ups for this championship. He could find himself with a heap of trouble heading down the Dottinger. That Ferrari and its V6, the same platform V6 used for the 499p hypercar. It is a fantastic engine, great for fuel efficiency, a proper modern engine for a modern Ferrari, but it does lack in that overall push down range. When you get up towards top gear, this thing does lag behind by a few miles an hour to its contemporaries, not only in Europe, but also on the North American market compared to the Ford Motor Company. Down to the line then goes Elite Cassie to form the basis of our first time today, and across the line he goes, and so it appears did not put a time on the charts there, so rather reluctant performance for Elite Cassie at this time. Cut away from him then to get back on board with the nearest driver to the checkered line here during the course of qualifying. Bear in mind, as he crosses the line, he'll have functionally one more lap left in the tank here, flat out, before the end of qualifying today, and that's for Regent in the number 420. Otherwise goes by FR77. Lights for the camera there as he heads down through the Dottinger. Much as the same problem you'll be finding with the 98s, you'll be finding here with the 420. It's a Ferrari side concern. Drivers who won't be struggling at all in terms of that straight line speed. You'd be looking at the Ford Motor Company. Tyler Vermack, sporting the 787 of the exclusive esports team, makes his move over to Ford for this championship. We see VSR Twiglet also with a straight line speed oriented car, the BMW M4. Now, despite that 20 kilo ballast, they'll be finding great leverage down the high-speed sections in the opening parts and the trailing parts of the Nordschleife complex. Down towards the line then goes Regent to form what could be the basis of our first legitimate times on the charts here. The number 420 across the line at 8:20.331. So this has been a little bit of frustration right off the bat for Elite Cassie. Missed out on the opportunity to put one of the first times on the charts there, and considering that is his second to last run here, as it were, at the Nordschleife, this is currently forming the basis if we cut back on board with the 98 at this time as more times continue to fly in. He's on his way currently down through the Hatzenbeck towards Hoheneichen. So he's not going to have an awful lot of time here. By the looks of it, he will possibly have just about a minute to spare as he gets to the checkered line. So if he invalidates again, it really is going to be a one-shot qualifying for the number 98. You can see it's that kind of pursuit of perfection that's stumping a lot of drivers right now. It's actually keeping a lot of drivers from competing and qualifying at all. We see VSR Twiglet's back into the pit lane and not with enough time to get back out on track Actually, no, I say that as if it doesn't take only about a minute to get around the GP circuit. So that is one thing to consider. There will be drivers stranded out on the track by some way after the qualifying bell rings. We're at the end of that qualifying session in about 8 minutes time. Tyler Vermaak on his way currently down towards, looking here, out through Schwalbenschwanz, now through the Kleines Karussell, down towards Galgenkopf. On his way down the Dottingen, you'll see a night and day difference between Ford and Ferrari at this section of the track. Vermaak is looking very charged up here to compete for a championship, seeing that this is one of his best opportunities to do so, heading back into the GT3 era. He was quite a competent fighting force in his day here in VSR Phoenix, took some hiatus out through Season 8 and then into Season 9. But now he's back in the 787 Ford. He makes his way down the Dottingen, and you can see he's really opened the taps up now on his way down. Sound of that 5.4 litre Ford M Sport co-engineered V8. No bells, no whistles. That is just all American grit under the bonnet of that 7th generation Mustang. Down towards, as we see here, in through the Nordschleife on his way to the line. You have to forgive the background noise, of course, being bonfire night. There will be, of course, the fireworks, and given that we live with several dogs, it's going to be quite the ruckus for this evening, but I imagine there's going to be plenty of ruckus out on track as well. Tyler Vermaak across the line in 8:16.640, puts himself 3.6, nearly 3.7 seconds up the road from Regent, currently to take the fastest time of the session so far. We also see a driver out on track at the moment, in through, by the looks of things here, Kallenhardt, and down towards Veerseifen. It's number 54, the season 8 champion, I should say, White Doctor. Now driving for BMW, previously cited driving with Aston Martin. Now he finds himself behind the wheel of the M4 on possibly one of the worst days to be in the BMW with that 20 kilo ballast. Next towards the line at the moment is the number 44 of VSR Grizz, and this is a peculiar turn for Grizz. We've seen him as a quite resident customer with Porsche over his time. We've even seen a little bit of action from other manufacturers, but never before have we seen it to where he's made a decision to move over to Nissan. And moreover, he's not the slowest in the session. Now, that old VR38 DETT V6 engine under the bonnet of that Nissan GTR is one of the most legendary motors in the history of the automobile. I mean, it is up there with the likes of, say, for example, the Chevy Small Block, or the 724 Ford Shelby American, or even, dare I say, the 2JZ. But it was always a bit of a sluggish performance for Nissan's GTR GT3 car. Now, they're a lot more comfortable now in developments with the Nissan 400Z over at the localized Japanese Super GT series, where they have firmly found their place amongst the ranks of GT500. But always making its leap over to GT3 was quite a big task for Nissan, and they did struggle for some time. But hell, if that isn't one of the prettiest cars on today's field. Next to the line at the moment, the number 7, so we'll be catching on board here with Boy Shea in the McLaren on his way down towards the line. One of two nearly identical McLarens. He shares the likeness there with Jayco 14's car. The two, of course, with R3M. So on his way down towards the line, we're on a board here with Boy Shea. We'll see what time he lodges in on the charts there. Does he go up ahead of VSR Smiler across the line? Yes, he does. Puts himself 15.5 seconds from pole position right now. Is in the ballpark of an 8:31. Potentially an 8:32. Yes, it'll be an 8:32.1 by the looks of things, or an 8:32.2 for the number 7. So a bit of a slower start to the season, just given the much more methodical nature that surrounds qualifying here at the Nurbugring Nordschleife. There's a lot more deliberation to be had from lap to lap, and a lot of drivers, you can see, are not really taking to that challenge at all. A lot of drivers actually staying in the pit lane, would much rather prefer things to stack out by themselves for this opening round, realizing that, try as they may, with an hour and 30 and 2 mandatory pit stops on the charts for today's race, they realistically can afford to play things a little bit safe over the course of qualifying. The only winning move, in the sort of words of war games here, is not to play. Such has been the case for plenty. Down the Dottingen, we see already invalidated, but with enough time to start one more flying lap, is Jayco 14. Now, we said as well for the number 7 of Boy Shea, these two are sharing a livery here. You can see it is strikingly similar for the number 14 and the number 7. In fact, if we have a look between the pair of them, you can see the major defining difference. Have a look at those wheels. Bronzed wheels for the number 07, the number 14, featuring what appears to be there some green wheels. Green or gold, actually, by the looks of it there. It's a little bit hard to form the contrast against the more olive tones of the car itself. Down through to Tiergarten towards the end of this flying lap here for the number 14. Jaco on his way to the line. We did see him invalidate out through Schwalbenschwanz and the Kleine Carousel. So it's not looking particularly hopeful here, but the sort of silver lining to the dark cloud that has been that last lap for him is that he has got enough time here to start another flying lap. He gets across the line then from 12th and remains there rather reluctantly so. Nearest to the line at the moment, we can see there's a little bit of action going on further around the field. As a matter of fact, one of the two cars caught up in that. Trailing behind the 88 is the 98, also having crossed the line a moment ago, was seemingly a new time onto the charts there. I'm not entirely sure which one it was. I think it was, yes, it was Otzi, the number 6 Nissan, now up and ahead of VSR Smiler. Down towards the line then comes the 88 and the 98 in unison. That's VSR Dollar Up and Elite Cassie. Across the line goes both of them to set new times on the charts, and Elite Cassie, better late than never here, puts a time in 7/10 up the road from Tyler Vermack. Now, these two have shared in a rivalry already in very recent memory in GT3. Take a look back to Season 3 of the NLRL Sunday League, available on the TRTN YouTube channel in its entirety, and you'll find quite a prolonged campaign between three drivers, two of which, of course, were Tyler Vermack and Elite Cassie, otherwise goes by Cass Van Veltzen, and a new fastest time by a staggering 2.4 seconds goes to the number 54 BMW against all odds here. 20 kilos, simply not enough to tame the spirit of the M4. White Doctor, fastest in the session now at 8:13.467. Next to the line at the moment, the number 42, we get on board here with Big Green Man, who really made some shockwaves towards the end of last season. Looking back to the results of Season 9, you'll find the Big Green Man took a race win, his first ever at round 10 of the championship. Sadly, we don't have the results to hand for rounds 13 and 14 at Alton Park. You can still find that, though, available here on TRTN for personal viewing. Down towards the line, then, goes Big Green Man, still retaining his position at Ford in the number 42. Down towards the line, the number 96, disqualified. So Twiglet starts from the back of this field. Not ideal at all for him. Big Green Man up into the top 5 ahead of VSR Grizz and Boyshay. Puts himself just ever closer to that 8-second margin. And really, this is the sort of country miles you've got to start considering in when it comes to qualifying here at the Nordschleife. And normally you can see these sessions brought down to thousands. We've seen even dead on a joint pole position back in Donington last season in the Porsche Cup era. But when you come to a track as large and as long-winded as the Nurbugring Nordschleife, you just cannot afford to start considering those margins. And if you are, that is a real blessing, because it shows that these drivers are almost exact replicas of one another. Down towards the line just a moment now for the number 28, VSR Chris, the only multi-time champion here in VSR Phoenix, down across the line and goes up to 7th fastest. He's behind VSR Grizz, who most recently won the Silver Division Championship. Not that it necessarily matters anymore for him, as he still finds himself promoted to the top echelon now. The number 44, alongside VSR Chris, will be competing in the newly established Pro category. A slightly more binary system we've introduced here at VSR Phoenix. Now just the pros and AMs, a little bit easier to digest from an information standpoint. Moreover, it allows the championship to stay lively between both pros and AMs. We've come to the end of the official qualifying timer, so the last of the drivers currently out on track. This is all there is left for them. You can see almost half the grid non-competitors in today's qualifying session. We can see one such driver looking to make a mark here, though, is the number 982 of VSR Funky Fish. Now competing with BMW, and we've seen Funky Fish in a myriad of manufacturers in the last couple of seasons, Aston Martin and Porsche most prominently. Now with the move across to BMW, could it be third time's the charm here? And across the line, he's into the top 10, so he won't be scoffing at a result like that, despite 23.8 seconds off the beat of White Doctor in the leading BMW number 54, and still puts 3 Beamers in the top 10, despite 20 kilos of ballast. Next to the line at the moment appears to be the number, and just getting a view here, the 787. So we're going to cut away from Funky Fish to get on board with Tyler Vermack as he heads down the dotting in towards Tiergarten here at the very end of the Nordschleife complex, as he's about to rejoin the GT3 circuit, or the GP circuit I should say, otherwise known as the GP Strecker, rocketing out there through the Nordkera down towards the line. As he rejoins the GP circuit, 3.1 seconds to beat here for pole position. He gets across the line, and he's only up to second, but ahead of Elite Cassie. White Doctor, though, seems to have been taking a resounding pole position away from the rest of the field today. A very early doors success, and that's going to sort of play further down the line, like dominoes here, as it were, for White Doctor. Of course, he's already proven himself championship material, and now as he returns into what appears to be full-time competition, could we be seeing the emergence? And we've had a few scares here and there of it potentially being equaled, but could we be seeing the emergence of another potential multi-time champion? Currently, as we mentioned before, the only person to have won multiple championships in VSR Phoenix so far has been VSR Chris. Looking back through those championship accolades, we need to take a look all the way back to Season 6 and Season 3. That was before our time here on TRTN in covering this series, but nonetheless, he took home 2 championships in the number 28. Could we be seeing a potential second in the future for the 54? Could we be seeing a potential first for the 787 or a potential first for the 98? Only time will tell, with plenty of time in this season. This is the staging point for all things in the future. Across the line then goes Regent to an improvement, but remains in 4th behind Elite Cassie. Nonetheless, he'll start on the 2nd row today. And great hustle for Ferrari, 3rd and 4th. Despite the clear disadvantage in the straight lines. The only other driver currently out on track at this time is the number, seemingly here, 42. Currently on his way around the track. Currently at the back of the top 5, the 42 Mustang of Big Green. He currently just made his way out of Nordschleife and down towards Exmuller he goes, but a big toe of grass there over the left-hand side, and there you can see throws the towel in at the end of qualifying today. That's the end of the road for Nordschleife qualifying with a 42 of Big Green Man. He'll be satisfied enough with the top 5, but obviously lamenting what could have been of today's session. That's the end of quali, though, after a bit of a muddied exit to the qualifying session, a bit of a muddied start as well with those technical difficulties. To give some brief context, as it'll be omitted from the YouTube release, the server setup was a little bit bugged out and was still showing all 3 practices, which is what it normally is for the majority of the week before race day. So there was just a little bit of a hiccup getting the season back underway. But this season does begin upon very precarious times, very peculiar times would be maybe the better word for it, as it now stands upon what is quite fittingly the ashes of its previous season. So much as in the name VSR Phoenix, this one has rose from the ashes of a cancelled Porsche Cup season. You can see it is now blossoming in the respect of returning back to normality. The GT3s are back, and with it comes a high caliber of drivers and a number of driver attendees. More on the entire grid in a moment's time. The one bit of news we have for today comes out of the world of Formula E, as it was announced this morning. The official debut of the Gen 4 car, and we can see that it has now been officially revealed to the public, courtesy of Formula E themselves, and it is looking very mighty indeed. It's set to make 50% more power overall than the previous Gen 3 Evos, whilst adhering to all of the creature comforts brought in from the most recent Gen 3 Evo wave, including that all-wheel drive system, giving them unparalleled acceleration off the line and formidable acceleration out of the corners. This is set to be one of the most competitive eras forthcoming for Formula E. It's set to make its debut in Season 13 at the end of 2026. It is looking very, very mighty indeed. I spoke with a few people about this car, and they all gave me the same conclusion, that it's starting to look strikingly close to Formula 1. And I imagine that is kind of the intention here. They are playing very close to the chest here with what makes Formula 1 in the modern day so fast. And this is their take upon it. And you can see drastic redesign for the aerodynamics as well. We saw that very bizarre, almost trapezoidal front wing from the Gen 3 era. Is still echoes of it exists in that Gen 4 design, but it's been smoothed out. It's almost a sort of beam front wing now, and you can see, especially over the back end there, looking towards the back of the car, is something very eerily reminiscent to the beam wings of Formula 1. So it's looking very, very strong for FIA Formula E at this time. That's going to be a very exciting thing to watch at the end of next year. We're not too far out from the start of Season 12 of Formula E. Well, not too far out either from the start of Season 10 of VSR Phoenix. And let's get more prominently into the discussion of the grid right now, with not a lot of time really to play for here. They're not waiting around for anyone in today's session. We can see right off the bat with 20 seconds, we'll be rolling down towards the latter part of the Dottinger, watching out on board at the moment with the number 54 of White Doctor. He starts from pole position. Tyler Vermack in second place, with Elite Cassie in third. Region in fourth, and Big Green starts in the top 5. We see one driver starting from the pit lane there. That appears to be Boy Shea in the number 7 McLaren. He's already starting from the pits. So looking further around the field, we see VSR Grizz in 6th, VSR Chris in 7th, VSR Otzi 8th, Funky Fish in 9th, and Smiler in 10th, or would have been in 10th there, as we can now see Boyche dropping down the lines. Further down the line then, Smiler in 11th, Dollar up in 12th, Antion 13th, and Indian Goat in 14th. Jonathan Curran starts from the pit lane in what would have been 15th. That's going to give a few extra positions for drivers behind him, namely Jayco 14, currently 16th, Didinho in 17th, Shawnee Mac 18th, GTR Daily Boy in 19th, and Tommy in 20th. VSR Twiglet starts from the back after a disqualification during quali. So now as we get on board here with our front runners, not a lot of time left in it here before the start of the first round of this championship, and really it has been a little bit hurried to get everything underway here. An hour and a half, of course, on the itinerary, double points, 2 pit stops up for grabs. Leading that charge then, the Season 8 champion, the number 54 of White Doctor, firmly back to the top steps of this starting grid. Heading down then, down towards the GP circuit. 21 cars in all, 2 from the pit lane, leaves 19 cars on track here as we head down towards the line, 2 abreast for the run down towards turn 1 in the GP section before we tackle the mighty green hell here for round 1 of season 10 of VSR Phoenix. Back into the GT3 era. Here we are firmly, and it's green and racing here in the Nurbugring. A brilliant start then from our front row. Tyler Vermack immediately on the attack here of White Doctor, following closely in their trails. You can see is Elite Cassie in 3rd place, looking to potentially get things side by side as early doors as turn 1. You can see gets himself right up to the rear bumper of the 54, gives him a little nudge there. That gives Vermack the opportunity to try and run things out wide. Elite Cassie up the inside. It could, dare I say, be 3 abreast on our run down the RTL towards the forward curve. It's still side-by-side action, though, between Tyler Vermack and White Doctor as they head through turn 6 in towards turn 7. And that looks to be Vermack up into the lead at the forward curves, rather befitting then of the Mustang to take the lead of the race at the forward curve. Down towards Dunlop we go. Already a change in the race lead. It's not been the best of starts here for White Doctor, but the worst is yet to come as we are yet to hit that mighty green hell. Out through turn 8, through Dunlop, into the Schumacher S as we go. You can see the bite there on the number 98 in the corners, getting really, really close now to the back end of the 54. Watching here with the former race leader, the man who started from pole position. It's not been the best of starts here for White Doctor, but with an hour and a half, this is a marathon and less so a sprint. So down into Bitten Warsteiner, you can see taking things nice and easy on that BMW, knowing he's going to need 100% of that available grip. He doesn't want to burn those tyres out too early before he gets to the Nordschleife. Down towards Hatzenbeck. On his way to the Vidal chicane, right over his rear. You can see very nearly having a go to put things side by side as Elite Cassie in 3rd place. His first drive in this season with Ferrari, and it looks to be already a mighty one indeed. And it's the same story for Vermack, at least in terms of VSR Phoenix. We have seen Vermack before drive for the Ford Motor Company. Looking further around the field, we can see towards the back of the pack right now, VSR Dollar up being pressured by Shawnee Mac, the Bronze Division champion of last season, now drives for Nissan. He's one of 3 drivers to have done so here in Season 10. We can see further around the order at the back of the top 10 right now. We can see VSR Funky Fish potentially getting into arms here with Smiler and Tommy. Tommy having carved his way up the order in less than a quarter of an available length of this lap. That is remarkable stuff right off the bat there from Tommy. Looking around the field here, we can see that Tyler Vermack already opening the taps as we make our way down towards the Flugplatz. This is a proper high-speed section here. Heavy commitment required for these cars. Being in the aero wash isn't going to be doing Cassie any favours, but he is going to be taking in hefty chunks of slipstream on that BMW. So riding the wave, as it were. You can see in the background, looking to potentially get side by side before our run down towards Schwedenkreuz. So let's get on board here with Elite Cassie, looking to potentially make things side by side down towards the run into Arenberg and Poststrasse, out through Schwedenkreuz, down towards Arenberg. Hesitates there for a moment on the brakes, doesn't try to get things side by side, knowing it tightens up massively past the exit of Poststrasse. Heading into a very treacherous section of the track here, the Adnar Forst section coming up in a moment's time. This could be dicey for Elite Cassie in his efforts to get around White Doctor. You can see, though, he's an omnipresent sight in the rear view mirror of that BMW, and maximum pressure for the 98. See this religious commitment to the line. He's not faltering 1 second from it. Almost every inch of the track there at his disposal. Those 3 already carving a significant margin away. Regent looking to have to defend in a moment's time from Big Green Man and the number 42 at the back of that top 5. It's now making our way in towards Metzgerfeld on the run into Kallenhardt. You can see there on the signs. the 8-kilometer mark here at the Nurbugring Nordschleife, making our way down through Kallenhard, then in towards VSR and Exmuller in a moment's time. This is a very technical section of the track, one that the Ferrari will be able to absolutely carve away on the BMW and the Ford up front against. Of those three cars, pound for pound, that 296 has got cornering down to a fine, precise art. But it's a case here of can Cassie master this vehicle when he's riding around in the aero wash generated by that 54 up in front of him. He knows he's got maneuverability from a physical standpoint, but it's a case of whether or not he can handle this machine at its maximum. You can see, though, it's taken a lot to shake his pressure over the course of the last couple of seasons. Moreover, it takes a lot to shake him off of the beaten track over the course of plenty of GT3 seasons across a myriad of championships. You can see now looks to be the staging point for a move heading down towards, by the looks of it here, the run into, I believe that is Bergwerk. It's really hard to see with how small the map is and how many dots there are on it now. Out through Bergwerk on the run in towards the Kesselchen section. Now, this could be possibly one of the worst areas for that Ferrari to get up and alongside that BMW, because he'll be riding on the dirtier side of the track. You have less available grip. Moreover, you can see right off the bat in the fight for straight line speed, he is losing against that BMW. Meanwhile, that 787 now nearly 3 seconds up the road. It's remarkable work straight off the bat for Tyler Vermack. He is looking for championship endeavours, and this has been a very strong start indeed from the 787. And bear in mind, plenty left to go in today's race. We're only on that first lap, making our way then out through Mutkerv, down through Klostertal, on our run down towards, by the looks of it here, into Stahlstrecke in a moment's time. But he backs off on what could have been a move side by side, just a little too far away at this time. He's going to be eyeing himself up for the most iconic corner on this track, the Caracciola Carousel, on his way down into that open hairpin left, hooks in there on the curbs. You don't want to wash out there at all, such as the case for the BMW, because you can see the dire consequences of what happens when you do. There's so much time lost there for White Doctor, and one slight slip through the Caracciola Carousel was all it took to put Cassie up into second place. Looking further around the field here, we can see a great fight going on between Tommy and Indian Goat. The battle of the Ferraris here on their way out of Carousel. Currently making their way through Hedvigstor and the Hohe 8 section of the track. Holds short there, lets the number 9 run himself out of road before we get to Hohe 8. This is going to be a very tight section coming up here. Hedvigstor coming up. Then through to Wippermann. It's very easy for these Ferraris, especially given their predicament over the curbs, to end up throwing that back end away in through Exbach. They're side by side, leveraging easy does it moves for Tommy. Looking at that on the replays here, so you can now see the live footage in the bottom right showing still the fight going on between these two. Let's get a gander as to what went wrong there for the number 9. This is out of Exbach. You can see there just a little touch on the grass. That was all it took. That was quite a hefty slam against the wall. We were looking actually down towards the map at the time. That is quite a sizable impact we've just seen there. Making their way currently down through that was Sprunghugel, now on their way down towards Flansgarten 2. You can see a proper flurry of cars here towards the back of the pack. A huge impact there for quite a few, involving as such the 88, the 46, the 7 and the 14 all slowing down there, giving easy leverage to Jonathan Curran in the number 21 Porsche. Oh my goodness, the leap out through Sprunghugel, and in the background, I believe that, yes, that was trouble for, that was Boy Shea. Goodness gracious me, look at this section of the track. It was feral. So heading down into Sprunghugel, you see the two BMWs up in front, GTR Daily Boy and VSR Twiglet. That was the rear end lifting, and then a big spin in the background, well, start of a spin there for Boy Shea. Then it snaps violently in the opposite direction, ultimately putting him in the wall. We're back on board with Jonathan Curran. He's up to 16th place in the number 21. Started what appears to be from the pit lane today. VSR Otzi, we can see he's a little further up the order as he makes his way onto the Dottinger Hohe, as I should say, in the number 6 Nissan. Looking around the field here, we can see side-by-side battle going on between Tommy and Grizz, and seemingly in the fight of the V6s here, it's Nissan emerging as the victor as they make their way down towards Tiergarten. Up in front of them, they've got VSR Chris and the number 28 BMW. My word, what some shove there from the 44 Nissan. Very rare sight on any grid, let alone today here at the Nordschleife, but Nissan are really starting to blossom into their element. Now, we've seen quite a few niche manufacturers worm their way back in a mainline competition. I think most prominently in the last couple of months, we've seen the rise of Bentley back into competition. And now we see Nissan as the potential next chapter of this philosophy, courtesy of VSR Grizz, the Season 9 Silver Division champion, the Season 8 Silver Division runner-up, now competes firmly in the top echelon in the pro category alongside champions around him. Up in front of him there, you've got the Season 3 and the Season 6 champion, the number 28 of VSR Chris, not too far up the road at all. You've also got that fight going on for the number 54, the Season 8 champion, that being White Doctor. Shawnee Mack up the road there as well, also driving for Nissan, and it was quite a bizarre sign to see him make the move across to Nissan over the course of Season 9 into Season 10. Of course, won in the Bronze Division and was dominating in Bronze back in the Porsche Cup era. Now as he makes his move to Nissan, will we see if he's lost his edge for GT3 racing? Currently he's 18th, but you can see very clearly with some damage to contend with after 10 minutes of racing here at the Nürburgring. White Doctor now 1.3 seconds off the margin for Elite Cassie. Meanwhile, the gap has now started to fall between Cassie and Vermack. There could be the consideration in the next couple of laps here at the Nürburgring of a potential fight in the near future. And I think that's one of the many beauties about the Nürburgring as a circuit, is because of its enormous size, you really wouldn't have to wait X amount of minutes, X amount of laps. I'd say now we could possibly see that battle kick off before the end of this one. And we're only on what is effectively lap 1, even though this is technically lap 2. Looking at where things stand then, it is still incredibly close. One of the closest fights going on at the moment. Three-way fight between Tommy, Grizz and Chris on their way into 6th place. Further down the line as well, we could be seeing some fights between Jonathan Curran and Jayco 14. McLaren versus Porsche. The number 21 in pursuit of the number 14. Getting back on board though with this three-man fight. They make their way in through Hoheneichen in the Hatzenbeck section, this iconic area of the track, waylaying the start of this formidable circuit. So down through Hoheneichen, onto that high-speed section, following on to the Flugplatz here, and you can see it's 6 cylinders across the margin here, across the board, 6th, 7th and 8th, all with a 6-cylinder engine in some capacity. It's BMW's inline 6 versus Nissan's VR38 DETT V6 engine versus Ferrari's brand new V6 engine. You can see, fastest of the three, dare I say it, have we left Nissan out of the consideration for some of the fastest in a straight line, or are we seeing just a formidable setup from the 44 today? VSR Grizz is properly lit up here in the Nürburgring. On his way through Schwedenkreuz down towards Arenberg and Poststrasse, you can see not to be left out of this fight. The 66 of Tommy still right up to the back end of that Nissan. Out through the corners, you can see its unrivaled cornering capacity in this fight of 3. Staying up in the clean air though, all of the benefits still resides in the court of that 28 as we head down to the Adenauer Forst. Staying here though with Grizz, this is a proper little scrap we're seeing between himself and Tommy, not to be left out as well in that fight for 6th place overall. We are looking right now, courtesy of VSR Grizz, at that fight of 7th. Christian Lebay in chat there as well, suggesting we might do a full revival series for the Nissan GTR somewhere down the line in Competizione Performance League. Currently, they're in the middle of the, and coming to the end of the American leg of their journey in the Jaguar GT3 Revival Series, which we covered earlier on today. Still watching here with Grizz v Tommy, the 44 versus the 66, and I must say it's been a real fired up performance from both of them. You can see wrestling that 44 into form as we head our way in through towards Verseifen. In the background though, that looked like trouble for the number 9 Indian Goat, in serious trouble. Now out through Exmuller. Looking to get side by side here. It's he who dares wins, and up the inside goes the 66 of Tommy. Now that was an incredibly brave move in towards Exmuller as we go. That was actually out of Verseifen earlier, so that's our mistake. Out through Exmuller, now up the Asphalt Breitscheid towards Bergwerk. This is some real grit in the teeth here of the 66. That took some serious guts to put himself side by side with the Nissan. Was even touching onto the grass there. But the 66 now up to 7th on his continued campaign inside the top 10. It has been a brilliant start here by Tommy. Meanwhile, looking up the road, the predictions that they could be fighting by the end of this lap seemingly appear to be coming true here, as making our way out through the high-speed mud curve section in towards Klostertal on the run towards Steilstrecke and Carousel. We're on board with Elite Cassie and Tyler Vermaak in the battle of the race lead right now between Ferrari and Ford, two age-old manufacturer rivals on their way currently down through Steilstrecke, now towards the Caracciolo Carousel. We saw earlier on it was a slight incorrection from the 54 of White Doctor that gave Elite Cassie the opportunity to come and fight for second place and take it with decisive vigor in the 98. But could it be the same story? No, not to be fooled in the same manner. The 787 absolutely nails Carousel. So Tyler Vermaak currently maintains his stead, but the last recorded interval there, 0.4 of a second in difference between the pair of them. We'll quickly just cut away from this as we do see even closer margin up for discussion. VSR Smiler versus VSR Antion at the back of the top 10. Porsche versus BMW now in the discussion of the Nürburgring 24-hour. It was quite fresh wounds between these two manufacturers at the end of the most recently ran 24 hours of the Nürburgring. So these are two properly dominant manufacturers here. They know the Nürburgring like the back of their hand, and these two manufacturers have dominated every single competition ran here at the Nürburgring. They currently make their way down through by the looks of things here. You do have to forgive us because we're having a little bit of trouble reading the map. I'm not entirely sure why ACC decides to flip the map, what's this, 90 degrees to the left? Very bizarre. They're currently on their way down through Exbach and Brunchen in towards Eiskurve. We did have momentary yellow flags down the order. That was for the 46 of Didinho, I believe. They're having some trouble before Carousel, namely down through Steilstrecke. So cutting away from that fight at the back of the top 10 as it starts to dissipate. We now catch on board as we head through the Schwalbenschwanz towards the Kleine Carousel. Leads off into the grass there, very nearly into the wall for the number 98 of Elite Cassie. That does invite White Doctor in at possibly the most vulnerable time for Cassie. As mentioned earlier on in today's broadcast, Ferrari weren't looking their best when it came to straight line speed. So what worse a place to be caught up by a car like the BMW M4 than out of Galgenkopf here down towards the Dottinger. You can see the Ford is just able to open the taps up, and that gap is only going to continue to grow between these two over the course of this race. But I'm now getting on board with the 54. As you can see, slowly but surely, he's got him on the hook here, and he's just reeling in the 98 of Elite Cassie. That floating around a 1.2 to 1.1 second margin. But now you're going to start to see as we mount the crest down towards Antoniusbuche and Tiergarten is where things could definitely reel in between the 98 and the 54. Making our way down through Antoniusbuche now towards Tiergarten. There, at the very last second, we are seeing a couple tenths of improvement in the gap between Cassie and White Doctor. Super late on the brakes here as we come to the end of lap 1, as it were, onto the start of lap 2. 1 hour, 13 minutes left to go. Bear in mind, 2 mandatory pit stops on the charts today. Still plenty to be discussed, and starting off on a double points round, no less, is going to make for a very lively start to the championship, especially when you consider that later down the line we'll be going from the double point system down towards a standard race, and that's going to be the 45-minute no mandatory stop sprint race on November 12th at the Brands Hatch circuit over in the United Kingdom. Then we're back onto the standard formation, 1 hour with 1 pit stop for round 3. The circuit of the Americas following on the suit for that, for a double set of hour-long races at Spa and Kota. And then back to 45 minutes for the sprint race at Zandvoort, then back up to standard for Mount Panorama, and then a one-off 2-hour event, 2 mandatory pit stops and double points at the Grand Prix circuit Kyalami before we head into the winter break. Then we'll be touching on what the next 5 rounds will be looking like in 2026. We'll discuss that over the course of the next couple of rounds of this championship. Right now, though, we're here in round 1. It's double points on the charts, an hour and 30 against the clock here at the Nurbugring Nordschleife. Already over 15 minutes in, we find ourselves with a broadly different outlook of that podium right now. White Doctor, the man who started from pole position, is now down to the back of the podium. Tyler Vermaak now leads, and Elite Cassie is not too far off from a challenge of that leading position. Further down the line, we can see there's been quite a few incidents, more namely at this time were a few involving, I believe, Jayco 14. He had some spotted bobber there already into the pits as well, because VSR Antion, who I believe caused that yellow flag from just a moment ago. VSR Twiglet, who started from the back today, is up quite a few positions now, up to 14th place in the number 96 BMW. So he's slowly but surely making his way up past that top 15 position. Could be hunting down a top 10 later down the line. Now looking here on our exit of the... looking here, that would be Hatzenbecksborg and down towards the Vidal chicane in the Grand Prix section. We're on board with Tommy in the number 66, now scrapping for 6th place. We saw his fight against VSR Grizz for 7th not long ago. Now we get to see where that goes next, as now we have a 3-car fight involved for 6th place. We make our way down in towards the Hatzenbeck section of this track. Very tight, very twisty section. Difficult for drivers to get side by side, but it's a great starting point for a potential fight heading into the more high-speed areas at the Kittelbacher Hohe and Flugplatz, in through Kottenborn and down towards Schwedenkreuz later on after that. You can see that the BMW being able to leverage all of the clean air over the nose of the number 28 gives VSR Chris just heaps more available cornering grip. As his aero is able to do 100% of its job here, it's leaving the Ferrari a little bit unstable. It's leaving the Nissan lagging behind. And as you can see on the exit of Hoheneichen up the Kittelbacher Hohe as we head towards Flugplatz, this is where it could be made or broken for Tommy. We've seen that he's already willing to fancy himself a risky move here and there. It's namely one that got him past the 44 earlier on in today's race. Now as we make our way out through Kottenborn, over the crest down towards Schwedenkreuz in a moment's time. It's incredibly close between the 66 and the 28. Down through Schwedenkreuz in towards Arenberg and Poststrasse. Does he go late for the brakes there? Looking potentially for the inside. Lets him cover centre mass of the road so that he can stick back onto the racing line. The 66 all over the back end of the 28. But it's taken a lot so far to crack any kind of confidence out of VSR Chris. Will this be any different? Down towards the Adenauer Force, you can see the BMW just opens the taps and opens the gaps because he's completely vanished up from the road there from the 66 and the 44, pushing them back closer towards each other. It's going to take some serious gusto to put himself ahead of that 28. A stop and go 30-second penalty awarded for the number 1. That's for VSR Antion. So things going from bad to worse here. Namely, he has done his first mandatory pit stop. He's down in 14th, but he's going to drop a heap more positions by the end of today's race. But fortunately, this has come at quite an early point. Oh, off in the background there goes VSR Grizz. Can he recover it? You can see locking up over the front left. Did hit the wall on the far side. That could be damage for him as he makes his way down through Kallenhard. You can see no damage over the nose, but he did hit that side on. So trying to get a view here of what that right-hand side is looking like for him. We'll have to catch on in a moment's time. Looking back up into that fight for 6th place. The 66 versus the 28. We're staying on board here with Tommy in the Ferrari. See even more trouble for the 44 in the foreground there. We heard the tyre screech, but we did not yet know the extent to the damages there for the 44. You can see it is definitely quite detrimental. We could expect Grizz to be coming in at the end of this lap. Early doors for the first of 2 pit stops. Bear in mind, he's got to balance that out with a second mandatory pit stop further down the line. We could be seeing the bulk of them come in right here and now with 30 minutes per stint, as it were. Now making their way down towards, looking here, Bergwerk before the start of a very, very high-speed section of the track. We're still on board with Tommy. We're going to try and catch back on board with him to get some of the onboard views. As a matter of fact, we'll cut from the attacking point of view, as more namely coming up here is VSR Chris in the 28. The only multi-time champion in the history of VSR now looks to be fending off in a fight of 6th place against the Ferrari right on his heels there. That's Tommy in the 66. They make their way currently down towards, looking here through Kesselschem and Muttkurve. Then towards Klostertal and Stahlstrecke coming up in a moment's time. Now heading down towards Carousel. Let's see how he tackles this one. We've already seen a few problems for BMW over the course of this race, namely for White Doctor. No such issues found for the 28 of VSR Chris. He nails that section. Following in his trails was a perfect line as well from the 66, moving like a single unit there, flowing through that hairpin. Now out through Hohe Acht, heading down towards the Hedwigshöhe and Wippermann into a very twisty and do forgive me there, very twisty and undulating section of the track. Out through Wippermann on his way then down towards Eschbach and Brünchen. This area that's very quite jarring for drivers. It does jut its way out from the general flow of the track. These very squared off corners here heading in towards Brünchen. Still on board with VSR Chris. Very easy for drivers to throw their balance off at this area of the track. In fact, this is quite a popular spot for a lot of compilations on YouTube for shots here at the Nurbugring, namely during the one of the more popular events around year on year, the Touristenfahrten, which allows people to pay to come onto the track, take their car, and it's sort of a run what you brung sort of situation. And plenty of times, especially down at Brünchen, we've seen issues of people, well, in the nicest possible way for the Lehman, absolutely stacking it. No such case, though, for our drivers here in the GT3s. They're on their way currently down through Flansgarten 1 and now into Flansgarten 2. They made light work of Sprunghügel in the middle. They make their way down towards the Schwalbenschwanz in a moment's time. You can see it's just been absolutely super glued to the back of that 28. The 66 has really been quite a formidable face in these fights so far. Already got up past the 44. And now looks to be challenging VSR Chris on what looks to be a very measured performance so far by the two-time champion. Looking further around the field to try and get a scope on what's going on with our leading pair, quickly cutting away from this fight of 6th. We can see right in the slipstream right now, Elite Cassie closer than he's ever been to the chances of leading this race against the titans such as Ford in a straight line. Dare I say it, the Ferrari is keeping pace. Out through Tiergarten then. On to the start of lap 3. Let's not discount what's going on here for White Doctor. He is right behind just as much. He's been able to have a very good last lap as it stands. Into the pit lane goes Tyler Vermaak at the end of 25 minutes of racing for the South African talent. Took an early doors lead of this race and led with confidence in that number 787 Ford. Now leading the charge, the number 98 of Elite Cassie, not far away from him, was the man who started from pole position in today's race. The 54 of White Doctor, the Season 8 champion of VSR Phoenix, now looking for a potential second title starting from today. A quiet and understated performance. Now, it was just as much the same in qualifying as it is today for Big Green Man. Now finds his way up to the podium positions because of that early pit stop for Tyler Vermaak. And you can see he's done so with some waves of damage on the left-hand side of his Mustang. Now on his way down through turn 6 in towards turn 7 of the Grand Prix section. Out through the Ford curve. This very same section of the track, the 787 overtook and then led ahead of the number 98 and the number 54, I should say. Looking at it here, really not too far off as we head through the Schumacher S's. The 98 still leads from the 54 in a narrowing margin here in the Grand Prix section. That is the BMW's bread and butter, and we've seen over the course of the last lap it took a lot to put White Doctor back in competition. He was quite a ways back from the leading pair. Now, with the 787 given a stop-go 30-second penalty, it's going to seriously hamper Tyler Vermaak's chances to come back into leading form in today's race. So it is going to leave us with a bit of a two-horse race up front between Cassie and Doctor over the course of the next hour and 3 minutes. But never say never on a potential turnaround today for Tyler Vermaak. We know when really pushed up against it, he is capable of miracles in that 787. He's gone by many numbers before that, this being the newest of them. It's the default number of the Exclusive Esports team, something that he holds quite close to him, this move over to Exclusive. We've seen that as of the last couple of months, he's been competing for a few different teams, but now seems to have nestled in at one of the largest names in console sim racing. Last couple of races, though, he has been plagued with penalties. I mean, Valencia does spring to mind in the Sunday League, most recently covered round 2 of Season 4, where he was just beset on all sides by trouble with penalties over the course of that race. Watching here with Big Green Man very nearly into the wall in the number 42 Mustang. So looking around for where our nearest fights could be coming from, we look back to VSR Chris and Tommy. Those two still absolutely level pegging here for what is now 5th place, courtesy of that pit stop for Tyler Vermaak. We do have yellow flags out. It's for the number 7 at the start of the Dottinger. So that's just a Galgenkopf for, I believe that's Boy Shea in trouble in the number 7. So for the R3M team, it's been real trouble. We've seen a few issues here and there for the 14 and now for the 7 as well. It's not looking to be a particularly grand day for the twin McLarens. Currently right now watching the battle for 5th place from the point of view of the two-time champion VSR Chris. This is a really fired up performance. It's very measured for BMW. They know despite that 20 kilos on balance of performance, they are still one of, if not the most competitive cars to take to the Nordschleife. And you can see Ferrari are giving them a very good run for their money right now. But in the long term, how far is the 66 not the 66, sorry. Yes, it is the 66, I should say. Willing to push the envelope, swinging high around Schwedenkreuz. It took some serious guts, and I said that before. It was going to take some serious gusto to put himself up in front of VSR Chris, and by God, he has done it. The 66 up into 5th place. That puts VSR Chris down a peg here, but this is a dangerous spot for him to have got the leg up here, because this is an area where we've already seen icy cold performance out of the 28 so far. Is it going to be any different heading into lap 3? Only time will tell. Heading into Adnar 4, so the 66 now up into 5th. You can see has not wasted, I should say, any time in opening the taps up, but he has flown a little too close to the sun there through Adnar. Now on the exit, definitely stumped himself with those curves. Bear in mind, it's now almost equal distance between these three. The number 1 receives a stop and go from race control, which they've got to serve in the next 2 laps. That's VSR Antion in a spot of bother there with the stewards. Now heading down towards Kallenhardt out of Metzgerfeld. You know, a very, very tight section of the track here. Now, you can make the argument with the clean air in his lungs, that Ferrari is going to be well ahead by the end of this section from the BMW. But let's see how this plays out, because Chris has had quite firm command of this area of the track so far. There's nothing to say that he won't still have it after being overtaken, considering he's not exactly right up to the rear bumper of that Ferrari. But I think what we are seeing right now in that fight for 5th is Tommy is well and truly distancing himself from the 28. Really, it was one thing that all it took to get him out in front, and then he's just gone with the wind in that 66. I think for VSR Chris right now, he's going to have to start considering his odds less so in a fight for 5th, more so defending for the position he now covets. That 28, not too far away at all from the 44, the Nissan of VSR Grizz. Now, I didn't have a lot of high hopes for his performance, given how Nissan seems to have treated quite a few drivers in history here on coverage in TRTN across a myriad of championships. You can make the argument there have been some erroneous results here and there. There have been the perfect storm, as it were, to give Nissan some real credibility. I think one that definitely springs to mind is all the way back in the NLRL Solo Multi-Class Endurance Championship, the one-off victory for Anton Pol. And I believe that was at Misano, if memory serves correctly. So that was quite a ways back, and it was sort of a perfect storm situation, coupled with a penalty for Tyler Vermack, that ultimately gave rise to Nissan's first and currently only televised race win here on TRTN. Now, am I saying it's not going to be impossible for that to happen again? No, not at all. I think it is definitely still possible for Nissan at this time, and in the hands of VSR Grizz, we are definitely seeing what could be the potential building into a potential race win later down the line. It is looking to be a very punchy car in the face of the current meta for ACC, the BMW, the Ford, the Ferrari, and the McLaren. That sort of holy quaternity, as it were. Nissan currently slotting themselves as that 5th manufacturer amongst them. So now over not halfway, I should say, over half an hour into today's race, we find ourselves looking down at some broadly different circumstances, namely for Tyler Vermack. He finds himself now just up the road from VSR Otzi, up in a 9th place ahead of number 6 Nissan. With that stop-go 30-second penalty, that's just going to be looming over his shoulder. No matter what kind of progress he makes right now, that is going to still need to be served in the next 2 laps. He is going to have to put quite a serious hamper on his performance today. I think the hopes for the 787, given the current situation, is to put himself back in that top 10. Into the pits as well goes the 97. That's GTR Daily Boy with BMW. Now, was that by choice? Because seemingly we've only just seen that pit indicator come on, and the 97 is almost immediately in his pit box. So could that have been a bit of an early doors retirement? We'll have to check for the 97 a little later on. Right now, looking for where the nearest gap on track is concerned, where we'd have to look somewhere in the ballpark up front or out back here for that 6th place fight mentioned from earlier on. At its last recorded interval, 1.163 seconds. That's the second smallest, actually the current smallest gap of this field. The second smallest being White Doctor from Elite Cassie. But you can see here, trouble for the 54 as we catch on board with him. Now, this was on the exit of Galgenkopf as it stands, and that forces him quite a ways back here. What was 1.9 seconds, he now finds himself increasingly vulnerable to lose out second place, of which it took him an arm and a leg to regain at this stead. Now you can see Big Green Man's looking to have a go down the Dottinger. He's still got maximum momentum, whereas you can see that 54 is limping after damages ensued on Galgenkopf. It's been serious drama for White Doctor. from the word go here, and a little over half an hour into this race, it doesn't show signs of getting any better. We'll see here for White Doctor, is it enough to force the 54 into the pit lane? We did see some serious upset in getting that car moving again, but is this just a flash in the pan? Does he think he can walk this one off? No, as you can see, heading for the pit lane and following in his stead there is Big Green Man in the 42. And this is where there's been a real area of contention in trying to get the cars slowed down over the course of this race. We've already seen it strike a few drivers right now, with Vermaak and Antion still yet to serve their stop-go 30s. 4 penalties ensued in the pit lane. Now these two seemingly have they got the car slowed down enough for that run. You can see actually in the pit lane as well, Elite Cassie in the pit lane. So what on earth has gone on here amongst our top 3? He didn't originally show as being in the pit lane, but the 98 is in as well. So with the 54 and the 98 up in the pit lane, could there have been the suggestion of a major incident between the two? Actually, no, hang on just a moment. There, so we're back out on track. A stop-go 30-second penalty for the 98. Not entirely sure what on earth happened for Elite Cassie. So it didn't show him in the pit lane. In fact, it showed yellow flags. Now stop-go 30-second penalty for Elite Cassie as well. That is incredibly bizarre. The bottom line right now is that leading this race is Regent in the number 420. Exiting from the pit lane, White Doctor seemingly with no penalties at this time. Big Green Man next to exit the pit lane. There is a whole swarm of cars in the pits at the moment, including Tommy, Grizz, Vermaak, Smiler, Otzi, Funky Fish, and seemingly we also saw there for Antion. But the number 66 picks up a stop-go 30. That's for Tommy for speeding in the pit lane. So this has been a real area of contention. A very muddied first round of the championship for a lot of the drivers here. And seemingly, this has come at probably one of the best times for White Doctor. As with Elite Cassie having that stop-go 30, he could soon return to that leading position of this race. So we've just seen there the number 787, the stop and go penalty cleared for Tyler Vermaak. Currently the last interval there was recorded at 8th place. That is since set to change. Looking right now, VSR Chris in 2nd place, up ahead of Elite Cassie and White Doctor. Bear in mind, neither him or Regent have yet to serve their first pit stops. We do see yellow flags out. It's for the 982, currently residing from the pit lane. It's VSR Funky Fish, seemingly potentially out of this race. A drive-through penalty for VSR Otzi has been issued now as well. So one of the Nissans in trouble. And a drive-through penalty is usually track limits. See here for Tyler Vermaak, he is in 8th place, so it was confirmed the first time around. He was 8th in today's race. A little bit of gravel over the left-hand side down through the Dunlop. It's been a real topsy-turvy race for a lot of drivers today. Another stop-go 30 issued, this time for the 982 of VSR Funky Fish. So no matter which way you look at it, it has been bedlam so far for drivers today. So still watching on board here with Big Green Man, who's the race winner of round 10 of season 9 back in the Porsche Cup era. Now in his time with Ford, things are looking to get very exciting. Not only does he stand upon the precipice here of getting up onto the podium positions by the end of today's race, but with that 30-second penalty for Elite Cassie to serve in the pit lane, he could be finding himself up on the front row by the end of round 1. Bear in mind there is still that extra run into the pit lane due for all drivers today, and we could expect the bulk of those to be served, as we saw at the end of the first 30-minute mark, at the end of the second 30-minute mark, when we've got 30 minutes left to go in today's race. So a race split almost down into perfect thirds here today in the Nurbugring. Right now leading the charge is Regent. He has got strategic advantage on at least a good handful of drivers, so there is that potential as well, just as much so as it's been for quite a few drivers today for him to emerge on the podium, let alone potentially on the front row. It is a very exciting start here for Regent. Normally has had the worst, almost rotten of luck in terms of the last couple of events here at VSR. We know that he is a very competent driver in the course of qualifying. Rarely have we seen things chain together to give him that same benefit in a race. Usually to not many faults of his own, he has found his way into trouble, but trouble has a bit of a nasty habit of finding him first. And seemingly this time around for Regent, it's a real turnaround performance for the 420, now in the Exeter Bergwerk. Currently 9.3 seconds up the road. We've just seen their confirmation the stop-go cleared for VSR Antion. So he's 9.4 seconds up the road from VSR Chris. That gap currently stabilising in and around the middle of the 9-second range. It fluctuates a few tenths at either side of it, but has hovered around 9.4, 9.5 seconds for the greater majority of this lap just gone. They find themselves 27 seconds up the road from Elite Cassie, but bear in mind that stop go 30 is going to put a huge blocker on that when it gets served in the next 2 laps. The same story for White Doctor. He's 50 seconds down range here from Regent. If he can get a swift pit stop in, there's a pretty sizable chance that he's going to be able to come out of this still in a pretty solid position. We can't argue whether or not it'll be exactly in the lead of the race ahead of White Doctor, but pretty close indeed. Out through Carousel, you can see when left to his own devices, it has been a real smooth drive for the 420. I think this lends further credence to that idea that trouble ends up finding him a lot more than he finds himself in trouble, and that's been definitely something he's been working on in the course of the last couple of seasons. He did attain a bit of a reputation for finding trouble quite often, but this is a bit of a broadly new direction for Regent, I'd say, since his time leaving Ford and moving over to Ferrari. It's sort of honed him a little bit. It's taught him a little bit of control, maybe, perhaps, and we're seeing right now that when left to his devices, as mentioned before, he's flowing around this track. It's almost graceful, the motion out of that Ferrari. I think it's what leaves drivers so addicted to this track, is because you just enter this perfect flow state and your mind in some degree just switches off. All you're focused on is what's in between the white lines, and it's almost unconscious. It's instinctive. Looking further around the road then to see where our nearest fights could be coming from. Right now we're a little strapped for choices, but looking here is our nearest among them. VSR Twiglet versus Tyler Vermack, 0.6 of a second apart from one another, but with Tyler Vermack further up the road, that gap is set to rise quite dramatically in the next couple of corners, especially when one considers Twiglet has yet to take their first of 2 mandatory pit stops. This is BMW's White Doctor, the Season 8 champion. Was part of that dramatic rivalry with Just Boris over the course of the last 2 seasons or so. Ultimately, it was a huge flashpoint event that happened down in the trailing rounds of that championship, namely down at the Circuit Paul Ricard, that ultimately swung it in favour of the 54 when the 999 left Season 8. Down through Sprunghurgel then, and we saw earlier on when we were watching on board with the 21 of Jonathan Curran how the back end of his Porsche would get up and away. You can see that area where the car just goes completely featherweight down through Sprunghurgel. That's where that high downforce setup is helping a lot of drivers today, is keeping the car sort of planted down into the tarmac, trying to minimize the amount of airtime there. Even flat out on a high downforce setup, you're going to find the tires lift for maybe a fraction of a second. Out through Schwalbenschwanz then and in towards the Kleiner Carousel. Watching on board with the 54, further up the road would be the potential considerations at this time for pit lane runs from a few drivers. Neither Regent thinks of it at the moment, but potentially could it be for VSR Chris? He's currently down towards where the pit straight is. Actually, it'll first be the 420. We were miscalculating where that was. You can see that was actually the sector timings we were considering and not the actual start-finish line. 420, is he into the pit lane? Yes, he is. So a bit of a false negative for us there, but into the pit lane goes the number 420 of Regent. Is the 28 expected to follow? That's the real question. Into the pit lane? No, doesn't appear to be the case. VSR Chris keeps things out long. You can see over the course of that last lap. Now, admittedly, that's hampered by the fact that Regent has spent some time in this lap getting into the pit lane. The 98 is a stop-go 30-second penalty. So things are getting from bad to worse here for Elite Cassie. Actually, sorry, that was the reminder to take that stop-go 30. Don't know why they made it sound like that was freshly issued. No, there is still that stop go 30, and it's now 2 laps left to go to serve that for Elite Cassie. So that was the warning issue there by race control. Can see here potentially into a fight very soon, as despite having taken their first pit stop, it did not count towards their overall contribution. So something has gone direly wrong there for Regent. He still finds himself with 2 mandatory pit stops to serve, so he didn't fulfill the prerequisites of the first pit stop. Now sadly, we don't have any information to hand from race control as to what those prerequisites are. We are just as much in the dark about it as the 420 clearly is. The number 42, Big Green Man's not going to be arguing with this whatsoever, because now, not only has he got pace advantage heading down into turn 8, he's also got strategic advantage over the 420. That's a free position, so even more so a chance to be on the front row by the end of round 1. It's looking very hopeful here for the start of the season for Big Green Man. His first full season in VSR Phoenix, off with a bang here so far. 45 minutes left to go, 15 minutes out from that second expected pit stop for the Mustang. So looking very, very strong so far. Could he be within the considerations further down the line to fight for the championship? We've definitely seen the determination on the 42 through the fledgling rounds of last season. And now we're seeing it ever more present in the move into GT3 proper for the 42, because his move over to Ford has been one very well met. You can see more yellow flags out as drivers forced into the pit lane. The 28 among them. Let's see. That was for VSR Chris in serious trouble. He's back into the pit lane right now. Car's at a complete standstill. Doesn't appear to be for a pit stop. That was seemingly not retirement 100% because it's yet to have been fully confirmed. But back into the pit lane, there has been some serious incident for the 28. Chris in trouble. He was previously part of that fight in the top 5 not long ago, but now he finds himself seemingly out of this race so far. In the pit lane, still unable to move. But now on the exit of the pit, so we've just seen on the exit of the pit lane with a stop go 30. So that is very bizarre for VSR Chris. We saw a very similar thing happen, as a matter of fact, to Elite Cassie. So I'm not 100% sure what's gone on there, because it's not showing them having come into the pit lane or even in the process of pitting. It's just showing them into the pit lane and exiting with a stop go. Very bizarre stuff. Right now, we're back on board with White Doctor, looking to lead this race in the next couple of laps. That stop go 30 isn't going anywhere for Elite Cassie. He still has to serve that one in the near future. I believe the warning was 2 more laps before that penalty escalates to what I think is a disqualification if you don't serve it in time. The 43-minute margin draws ever closer. The 982 is a stop and go cleared, so that's all clear now for VSR Funky Fish on the exit of the pit lanes. You can see frustrations in the VSR server for Indian Goat in the number 9, saying that he should have picked the Lexus for this race. Let's get a scope of what things are looking like here as we're over halfway into round 1 of the championship. We can see incredibly close fighting here between Regent and Big Green Man. We'll stay on board with these two in their fight as we recount the rest of the field. Right now, this is the fight going on for the podium, and now having forfeited position as we head down in towards Metzgerfeld and Kallenhardt here between these two. So looking at these standings so far, Elite Cassie leads with 43 minutes left to go, but by a withering margin, with that stop go 30 still looming yonder the horizon. White Doctor in second place, set to take the lead of the race very, very soon. Regent, we saw, didn't fulfill the prerequisites of that first run into the pits, and ultimately has now lost both physical and strategic advantage to Big Green Man, who moves up into 3rd place in the number 42 Mustang on your screens at the moment. Tyler Vermack in 5th place ahead of VSR Grizz in 6th, Twiglet in 7th, Tommy in 8th, and that's great hustle so far from the 66. Not too far behind him at all is the number 32 of VSR Smiler on your screens at the moment, making their way currently down towards what appears to be the Adnar Fost. Then at the back of the top 10, VSR Chris having seemingly magically re-emerged to the grid, 10th place, but with a stop-go 30 is going to put a hamper on his progress today. He's about 150 seconds seemingly on the telemetry there up the road from VSR Otzi. A very bizarre turn of events there. Not entirely sure what's gone on for the pair of them at all. Otzi in 11th, Funky Fish in 12th, Boyshay 13th, and Jaco 14 in 14th place. Dollar up in 15th. From the pit lane at the moment is VSR Antion in 16th, Shawnee Mack in 17th, and Daily Boy in 18th place. Back on board with Big Green Man for just a moment. As you can see, having got up past Region, he's opened the taps up exponentially on his run down towards Mudkurva. What a soundtrack that is from the Ford. Looking further behind, just to quickly get a scope of what was a seemingly an emerging fight between Tommy and Smiler, has quickly dissipated in favour of the 66 as he continues his efforts now down towards looking here on the map, as there's just so many corners to remember here in the Nurbugring. This is down through Versailles and Exmuller now on his run up the Asphalt Breitscheid. Smiler was at the last couple of intervals there 4 tenths away. That is very self-evident to be not the whole truth anymore. Antion, having served his second mandatory pit stop, gives him the all clear to continue for the next 40 minutes of racing here at the Nürburgring, all the way to the checkered flag uninterrupted. See, is still yet to come off the jacks. Very bizarre stuff so far. Right now we're on board with White Doctor. Let's get a look around the field though, just to sample the sights and sounds at this intermediary stage of the race. Now, of course, with these longer races being introduced for Season 10, it's going to bring us into these more strategically weighted battles. And you're definitely going to see that here right now in round 1. We're seeing that in process. You're also going to see that over on round 7 at the next endurance round of the championship, as it were. Another 2 mandatory pit stop race, but this time for the full 2 hours. The Grand Prix Circuit Kyle Army before we round out operations here in 2025. We will be joining us for 5 more rounds to make it a 12-round championship here in Season 10 over at the start of 2026. We'll be going on a lengthy winter break. There was the suggestion at one point in the early development of the calendar. The folks at VSR were suggesting that we were going to perhaps have a race on Christmas Eve, to which that was met quite resoundingly with no. There is in no world I'm working on Christmas Eve. As much as these races are fantastic, it is a real treat to be working with these folks so late on into the development for VSR Phoenix. We've been with the folks now for 3 seasons on the trot, from Season 7, where we were able to see Just Boris's rise to fame, and then we got to see his fall out of the season at Season 8, and then furthermore into Season 9, into the more precarious Porsche Cup era of VSR Phoenix operations. Now we get to see what is technically our 4th season covered. Into the pit lane goes the 98, so that gives the 54 the green light to lead here in the Nürburgring for Elite Cassie. He served his stop go 30, but is it going to be a case here where he's going to even be within the consideration of the top 5, considering that he still has 1 more mandatory pit stop to serve? Coming into the pits goes Regent to serve his second mandatory pit stop. Serve his first, sorry, I should say, because there was obviously that hiccup earlier on today for Regent. And it gets to the point you start to feel a little bit sorry. I think fate has a very horrible way of working against him in most situations. Yeah, and rightfully so. He's in our Twitch chat at the moment saying, to put it in ways that can be aired to a public audience, that this is not fair. This is a little bit of bull, as it were. You can see here, nearest fight, Tommy v Twiglet now. Another BMW looking to enter the iron sights here of the 66. Tommy has been on the warpath over the course of this race so far, on his way down the Dottinger. Oh, sorry, I was just in the middle of a yawn there. That's why I went suddenly very King's English for warpath. Yes, on his way down through Antoniosbuche and Tiergarten. Now on their way in towards the pit entry. Are either of them considering a run? We know that Twiglet has yet to do either of his 2 pit stops. Today is the day then when he takes his first of 2. Now giving the position over to Tommy, who has just been on a continued campaign here, now up past Regent and into potentially 6th place as the number 420 exits the pits just up the road there. So he has still got a fighting chance up against Tommy, but you can see how much more momentum there is for the 66 over the 420. They're up through the Yokohama S here on the start of the Grand Prix section. So for Regent, this is really going to have to be a case of trying to time when Tommy comes into the pits, because now he's going to have to try and stick very close to the 66, considering how much of the field he's been able to carve out over the course of what has nearly been a full hour of racing here at the Nurbugring. It could pay dividends for Regent if he is to get past here, is to perfectly mimic the strategy of the 66, and in the same course the 66 can absolutely shake him off his trails here. We've seen fake outs for pit lane runs. I think most prominently we saw one quite recently for it was actually Elite Cassie when he competes under his actual name on SimGrid. He was competing as Cass van Veltzen in the Mercedes number 420 at Valencia, where he served a fake out on Tyler Vermack, and it was one other driver as well. It slips my mind, my sincerest apologies, but the bottom line was it was a huge fake out move for going into the pit lane. Now, in a post-race interview conducted privately, we were told by Vermack that there was already the consideration that he was going into the pit lane, but that was quite an ankle snapper, even if it were intentional. The bottom line is, for that number 66, if he can get up past the 420, he can seriously throw a wrench in the works here on Regent by serving him an absolute fakie. And that would hurt. That really would hurt. Currently on the exit of what appears to be their Poststrasse, we're on board with the 98 of Elite Cassie. Still within a chance here of a fight for the front row of this grid. He's 11 seconds out from Big Green Man. He knows that he's got the pace under his belt to do so in the Ferrari, but it's going to take consistency now and keeping himself well clear of any trouble with the stewards for the next 35 minutes of this race if he means to hold on to even a podium position. So he's still got a fighting chance for a good result here. Good salvage for the 98 today. But it's going to take quite a lot to keep him in that fight right now. Looking for the nearest fights, you'd be really spoiled for choice when it comes to the discussion of the 2 Ferraris we were on board with earlier on. And here we can see on their way down towards Schwedenkreuz on board with the 420 of Regent. Currently in what is that fight for 6th place on the grid. Now the 66 is up past him. This is the worst case scenario for him. He has lost out to Tommy over the course of the Nordschleife so far. But now this is really what I was talking about from earlier on. This is his opportunity to salvage the current circumstances of today's race. If he can mimic the strategy verbatim here of the 66 up in front of him, he does stand a pretty solid chance, even having started with a bit of a stump in his strategy today. That was still quite a bizarre one. What kept him from being able to do that first mandatory pit stop? He did come into the pits, but we're not sure what in exactly he changed, whether or not he fulfilled all prerequisites to give him that first mandatory pit stop all clear. It has set him back away, but he can still hone the chances here to come home with a solid top 10 result. It may not be the result he's after, especially given how his performance has been over the course of today, but really this is damage control, and everyone who's been at the Nordschleife at least once knows a thing or two about having to salvage what has been a very far south race, perhaps a little bit foobar for a lot of people today. We're watching with these two. They go dancing through this section here, out through, at the moment, through Verseifen on their way to Exmuller. It's just one of the prettiest sections of the track there. I mean, the rolling hills, the trees, the forest, the little houses poking out. It is really proper picturesque German countryside, is it not? Brilliant, brilliant stuff here in Eifel.
So we'll cut away here from the two Ferraris as that gap continues to open. Just quickly checking here with the leading of two as Tommy now opens up to north of a second as we make our way in towards
Kesselchen and Mutzkurve.
looking around to the story of another Ferrari, now on his way out through Brunchen and Eiskurve. Actually into Einsen and Brunchen. Eiskurve and Brunchen. Yeah, I really should have brought back that disclaimer from the bottom of the screen that I think we had a few seasons back where it was the German you're about to hear was not performed by a professional. If you are German and are listening to this broadcast today, I can only sincerely apologise for the fact that I am probably butchering every single corner name. I've been trying to give it a good go here. I really, really have, believe me. On his way down towards Sprunghügel. You can see for the case of Elite Cassie, he's either lifting off just before he gets to that section or he's just got enough aero on the nose of that Ferrari to keep himself planted to the ground. But the bottom line is he's not risking anything down through that section. It's still giving him a really good run in through Flansgarten Zwei. I mean, look at that. It's just corner to corner. It's perfect down to the inch on the apex of every single corner there. He's flowing like mercury in this final sector. Out through Schwalbenschwanz, this has been a real area of contention for him. You can see he's learning quickly the do's and don'ts of Schwalbenschwanz, and now out through the Kleine Carousel, a little bit of a hiccup there on the back end of the 98. It is proper poetry in motion in that Ferrari. Out through Galgenkopf. Now, this is an area that caught out the 54 not long ago. Do we see perhaps where the issues start to arise? Yes, it's here. It's at that little patch of grass. We've seen, even in earlier stages before we went live today, we were seeing trouble down at that little patch of grass on the left-hand side. When it catches the rear left, especially when you are flat on the exit of that corner, you've got the hammer down. The moment you get even a moment of slip there, it pivots the whole car around and can put you in the wall. Shawnee Mack into the pit lane there, clears on his final mandatory pit stop in the number 4 Nissan. Less than an ideal start given the penalties earlier on for the number 4, but doing what he can against uncertain circumstances. 30 minutes left to go here. We'll be looking at the next run of pit stops in a moment's time. Do we see one out of the 98 is one of those questions right now. And you can see angling his way to the right-hand side. It is looking to be into the pit lane for Elite Cassie. I mean, that was a proper in-lap. That was quite something there for the number 98 Ferrari. He's into the pit lanes, looking at a potential undercut on Big Green Man and White Doctor. He's definitely got the chances to do so on the Ford. I'd say the chances for the BMW are a little bit sparse, but he has properly bit down for that lap there. That was something. Just to get a quick note here, we are seeing very close gaps right now between the 420 and the 66. That is still the argument between Regent and Tommy. They're down the Dottinger as we speak, 0.8 of a second. Now, they started off this lap with Regent behind. Regent ahead, sorry, I should say, and Tommy behind. Hence the comments actually from Indian Goat in chat saying looked like Regent had a shadow. And you can see that it's all stealth livery for the 66. Is it reflecting a little bit of a turn in the mentality for Tommy? I mean, he definitely did have quite a few spats with a few different drivers. He did sort of end up developing through word of mouth of some other drivers, not us here at TRTN, as we wouldn't dare, but there was that sort of spread of word of mouth of sort of a bad habit that he was developing for up the inside, a little bit rambunctious, a little bit dangerous moves, some could make the argument. But this is a much more clinical Tommy, I think we're seeing. And this is the same story we've actually seen out of Region. These drivers who previously had this sort of lingering reputation, whether it be within the community itself or on a wider basis through word of mouth, of having a little bit more of an elbows out mentality, finding their way into trouble. I mean, this has been a clinically smooth drive so far. I've not seen really much in the way of, besides the slight hiccup in the pit lane, any kind of issues for either of these two. See here for Tommy, I mean, it's razor sharp. It is razor sharp for that 66. Elite Cassie's into the pit lane. We saw that earlier on, and currently still 2 seconds up the road from Tommy, with Tommy still having to take his run into the pits. This could be a very exciting season. I think a lot of these drivers have been hotly anticipating the move back into GT3. I think the Porsche Cups, and reflecting upon it whilst we've got the opportunity, I think the Porsche Cups, in the nicest possible way, and this is my honest opinion, this is not because I was paid to cover these events, as it's been the case with the last 4 seasons. I mean, it's kind of what we do here, but in a completely unbiased perspective, I think the Porsche Cups were a good idea. And I will stand by that decision that they were a good idea. Because I think with ACC, and we find this a lot, and it'll be quickly shaken out of commission when we head over to racing games like Project Motor Racing and Le Mans Ultimate, but I think we were weighed by complacency. And that was a kind of a problem that we've seen with a few different series, and we see their efforts to try and branch out. But the problem is right now, the general masses of ACC don't want change. They don't want things that are different. They want what they understand, and that's fine. That's not, we're not critiquing their rights to have what they want, to stick with what they like. I mean, you don't see me going skydiving because, funnily enough, I'm not a big fan of it, but you know, I'm not going to be mad that it is an option. That's the way I look at it. It is an option. It is there. And I think it's good that it is there. And that's the case for the Porsches. It was a good concept. In execution at the start of the championship, it was really, really close, and it was really enjoyable. I mean, we have all the data here for previous race wins, and you saw that past a certain point, namely, it was the turning point for just Boris at the start of that season. It was a very mixed bag. I mean, you could never really quite predict where it was going next. We saw wins from Cassie. We saw wins from White Doctor. We saw wins from Tommy. We even saw Big Green Man's first win in VSR. We saw wins for the Blue Frog, who went on to win in the Gold Championship, and therefore by proxy overall in Season 9. I think when you look at just the data, it is quite an exceptional championship, but the major issue surrounding that, I should say, Season 9 was its attendance. Not a lot of people want to commit their time to racing in Porsche Cups, and with due reason. They are some of the hardest cars in this game to handle. And when you're used to GT3, you're used to having a car that's a little bit more driver accessible, it's a little bit more comfortable in that sense. It's not a vehicle constantly trying to rip your head off. That people don't really want to get into a car that will rip your head off. But sort of a TLDR to everything I've been saying there is, I think it was a good choice, and I stand by the decision that I thought it was a good choice, and I think it's a cool idea. But in execution, people just don't want Porsche Cup. As it turns out, there was the market for it, but when numbers started dwindling, it was a cumulative struggle past that point. When more drivers dropped away, less drivers felt inclined to show up because, oh, well, there's only, you know, XYZ amount of drivers. And that sort of cascaded into the final days of that championship where we were only looking at about 8 drivers on track. But this is what people want. And really, you can't argue with it. The GT3s, it is what this game is. Oh my goodness, there. Look at the car control. My God. From Big Green Man. Look at this on the replay. My goodness, we were sort of caught there dumbstruck by this car control. This is down through Nordschleife in towards Klostertal. You can see there, nicks the curve on the inside, very nearly into the wall. Oh my, that's inches from the wall there. I mean, that's strikingly reminiscent. What was it? Brazil 2016 for Max Verstappen, where he was inches from the wall there. A very iconic clip of that happening as well. We see a little bit of lag there, but into the wall, seemingly, was the number 4 of Shawnee Mack. I'd be curious to what some of the people in chat are thinking about Project Motor Racing. I've had a lot of clients approach me, a lot of my current clients as well approach me about Project Motor Racing, asking what my thoughts and opinions are on the game. I think personally it has a huge upside potential to replace a lot of the niches this game attempts to fill by itself. More on that in just a moment. Yellow flags out down here in this opening set of sectors, and it's for the number 44. Significant damage there for VSR Grizz. Let's see if we can catch on board with the Nissan right now out through Adnar Forst. That is quite hefty nose damage out of Polstrasse into Adnar Forst for the number 44 Nissan after his second confirmed mandatory pit stop. He's let back through by Jayco 14, but now as he head through Metzgerfeld down towards Kallenhardt, how much longer can he expect to keep that one running on the Nissan? That is quite hefty nose damage. We don't know yet if there's been significant damage to the steering. Looking on board here with the 44 of VSR Grizz as the yellow flags continue to roll instead. It is looking okay, at least stable for the 44, but significant damage to the aero means he's going to get nowhere near the same cornering capacity that he had before this incident today. So as we're cleared to go back into green flag conditions, 22 minutes left to go. Indian Goat in chat asking, what is Project Motor Racing? Oh, hang on just a moment there. You can see that discontent with the way that the car's been handling. That's the 44 potentially out of today's race. A reluctant end to what looks like a hopeful start in the Nissan era for VSR Grizz. Today maybe just not the kind of day. I mean, the Nurbugring, let's be completely honest with ourselves, it is a car killer. It is the most feral, the most visceral driving experience. It is a track that did not earn the name The Green Hell by accident. It is hell on earth for a motor car. No such has been a different story for Nissan. Into the pit lane comes White Doctor, just on his run in now. So to answer the question from Indian Goat in chat asking, what is Project Motor Racing? It's an up-and-coming sim racing title being developed, and it's got quite a lot of heavy ties right now to IMSA as it stands. They've got a good standing partnership with IMSA. They've got the GTPs, they've got the GTDs. It's looking to be sort of like Project Cars. I think that a lot of the closest comparisons I've seen from a lot of people in the community has been Project Cars. You've got a variety of vehicles. Its heavy emphasis has been on GTPs and GTDs, otherwise GT3s. But it's going to have a myriad of different racing formats. There's cup cars in there, MX5 cups, 964 cups, 992 cups. Moreover, something that really caught my eye, and this is something I'm thoroughly looking forward to when the game does ship, in actually not too far from now. I think it is shipping by the end of the year. It's about 30 days out from release at the time of recording. It's got a lot of involvement with older GT racing. So the sort of early GT1 days with cars like the Saleen S7, with cars like the Porsche 911 Strassenversen. It's got that sort of GT1 era. I think they've got the Maserati MC12 GT1 as well. I'll have to actually quickly pull up the car list. Just do give us a moment there, because there is quite a lot to be discussed with that game. I am really looking forward to it. I will be getting it myself. Not sure by how much I'm going to be able to play it, considering my in reality my rig is now broken. So sadly I can't race, but I will be getting it because a lot of my clients want to move there, and there's a lot to be discovered and sort of taken under the wings of a lot of these different championships. I personally do think that VSR's future could definitely be looking towards Project Motor Racing, but it is a case right now. A lot of people are set in stone on ACC. I think there is not going to be this dramatic shift that a lot of people are saying that there are. Yes, ACC will effectively become extinct by the end of 2027. Let's not make any mistakes about that. With these new racing games creeping in on console, it's only a matter of time now, really. It's a ticking time bomb or a sinking ship, whatever analogy best suits the situation. Very good car control, by the way, there for the number 28 of VSR Chris. Just get a look at that on the replay. This is on the exit of Sprunghögel. You can see there, the front of the car lifts up, and that ends up creating quite a hefty bit of understeer. That becomes oversteer when his left rear touches the gravel, but that's great car control from the BMW. So yeah, looking at the car list, I mean, they've got cars from I can't remember if you say it Gillette or Gilet, like the thing you wear, but it's the Gillette Vertigo. They've got the Mosler MT900, the TVR Tuscan, the Morgan Aero 8, the Marcos Mantara. They've got the older Porsche 911 GT3 RSRs from the sort of early 2000s, so like the 99, I think it's the 996 one with the weird headlights. You know the one, that one? Also, the other cars, what definitely caught my eye right up front was GT1, Panos Esperante, Porsche 911 GT1. And then you look further around on that concept as well. You've got the Lister Storm, the Lamborghini Murcielago, the Aston Martin DBR9, the Saleen S7. I mean, that is one of my favourite eras of racing, was the early 2000s, sort of to very, very early 2010s GT1 era in the North American circuit. That was really quite something. That's going to be something we're heavily trying to involve ourselves with. India Goat in chat saying, yeah, I don't think ACC can survive with Project Motor Racing and LMU planning to come to console in 2026. Yeah, I mean, we're taking on water here on ACC, and that's something I feel like I spend a little too much time on, is saying that, oh, it's going to be over for ACC, you know, it is going to become extinct. I want to highlight that that's not to any fault of ACC. It is still a fantastic game, but it's been the pretty much only choice any of these console sim racers have to having that sort of real deal experience, that proper top echelon esports level stuff without having to fork out 4 to 5 figures on a professional PC setup. I mean, this wasn't cheap for us, and we're commentators. Our PC set us back, I think, about 1,400. So it's not a cheap business to get into esports, to get into sim racing. So for console players, this is the tip of the spear. And you could get into sim racing for as little as probably a couple £100 now. And to have more variety on the table than just ACC, it's going to spread the pool quite thin. And already with numbers on the decline for ACC on console, as more and more people muster up the cash to move to PC, this is going to give them the option they didn't realise they wanted. Watching here, 17 minutes left to go. Now on board with Tyler Vermack on his way in towards Schwedenkreuz. I think what's good as well about Project Motor Racing is that, yes, there's a lot of that heavy IMSA involvement, but if you're looking for an ACC-styled experience, but you want to do it under a different avenue, this game ships with GT3s. It ships with GT4s. In fact, it ships with newer GT4s than the one we get in ACC. A lot of the GT4s that even I myself have said on multiple of occasions need to be in the game at some point or should get added as and when Kunos can add them, like the Mustang and the Supra, are in Project Motor Racing. So there's a up-to-date GT4 experience for those willing to seek it out. Can definitely see a lot of people moving over to this game just simply not only because it is the next sort of big experience, but also for a lot of people, the driving factor behind that is the IMSA involvement. It's going to be having those GTPs because for most people, if you want access to GTPs or LMDHs, whatever you want to call them, you're going to iRacing. And iRacing, I mean, that's a mortgage at that point. So to have that for retail price for a console sim racer, it is going to be a game changer. Looking back into the here and now, though, 15 minutes left to go. White Doctor continues to lead them with Elite Cassie 27 seconds down the road. Big Green Man in third place. Tommy in fourth. Tyler Vermack in fifth, with Regent in sixth place. VSR Smiler in seventh. Jaco in eighth. Chris in ninth with a stop-go 30-second penalty. Could find his way out of the top 10 by the end of today's race. And in 10th place right now is VSR Otzi in the number 6 Nissan GTR. Twiglet in 11th place, Funky Fish in 12th, Dollar up 13th. A little bit of trouble there over Dunlop at turn 8 in the GP section of the track there for the number 88 car, still with one more pit stop left to serve. Antion in 14th, Shawnee Mack in 15th. In the pit lane right now, Boy Shea in the number 7th. And the number 7, I should say, in 16th place. VSR Grizz in 17th. Having repaired the damages on the nose of that Nissan, he'll be just happy to get across the checkered flag at the end of round 1 today. Onwards and upwards for the run into Brands Hatch next week at round 2, I should say. And then at the back of this 18 car grid, what started as 21 cars today, the death toll only continues to rise here with only 18 cars left on track. 3 out of today's race will catch on with the full result of things at the checkered flag later on. But in 18th right now, GTR Daily Boy with damage on the nose of his number 97. Now, something I want to draw to your attention as well is, I believe it's here with Twiglet and Daily Boy, and that was the resurgence of the GTR nameplate. Now, they announced this a couple of, I think it was actually a couple of weeks back now in the trailing rounds of the Porsche Cup era. And it was quite exciting to see a heritage name sort of come back into the world of VSR Phoenix. I think it's quite nice to see the return of GTR. I do seem to distinctly remember them in much earlier seasons here in this championship. 3 out, who could that be? Asks Indian Goat. I mean, you're one of them. So we've got one. That's 33% covered. Sadly, it slips my mind at this time. Been a little bit ill as well. Very obvious by the fact that my brain's not working as it should. No, just a little bit under the weather is all. I mean, it is going around. I can feel myself coming down with something. Down the Dottinger goes the 54. So whilst we've got a little more time as well, back onto the current discussion at hand about the potential future for leagues like VSR with the arrival of Project Motor Racing. What I think definitely does sweeten the deal, not only is there a great ensemble of cars, there is a great ensemble of tracks right now. You are not spoiled for choice. In fact, I think this game is shipping with more tracks, if you include layouts, more tracks than ACC does at the moment. And a lot of the same tracks that we've come to know and love are still present in this game. I don't think they would have been able to sort of live with themselves shipping a game without quite a lot of these important tracks. I mean, looking at the European ensemble for Project Motor Racing, we've got Zolder, we've got Spa, we've got the Nordschleife, we've got the N24 layout, we've got the GP Strecker at the Nurbugring, we've got Silverstone, we've got Imola, we've got Donington, we've got the Red Bull Ring, and we've got Monza. Now, admittedly, due to some licensing concerns, they've had to rename a few of the tracks. Silverstone's been renamed to Northampton, Donington's been renamed to Derby, Imola's been renamed to San Marino, Red Bull Ring's been renamed to Spielberg, and Monza's been renamed to Brianza. But they are a much smaller dev studio. I think it is still quite astonishing they've been able to get these tracks in. I'm pretty sure these are in the same vein as what has become an industry standard for racing game development. These are now laser scanned models of the track, so it will be very, very lifelike to the real thing, just minus the branding. So when you go down the Hamilton Straight at Silverstone, instead of saying a big Silverstone sign up on the overhead gantry between the wing and the Hilton Hotel, it's going to say Northampton, which I suppose makes sense. It is in Northamptonshire. For American tracks, they've got some good ones as well. Daytona's infield course, they've got Mid-Ohio, they've got Sebring, they've got the Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, and they've got Lime Rock. So they're not spawned for choice. It's not just going to be European-centric. They've also got tracks over in Asia and Oceania, one at the moment, that being Mount Panorama. That is a serious heavy-hitter signing. They've also got the Kyalami Grand Prix circuit down in South Africa, and then for South America, they've got the circuit Interlagos. So they've got a great lineup for what is effectively an indie development title by comparison to most racing games we see in the current market. This is a bit of an underhanded development process, and they've got a real lineup here of games. Let's sort of cross our fingers and hope that the game doesn't flop on entry, because I think it has serious upside potential to become the next big central title for console sim races. It's going to be a three-way fight between ACC, Project Motor Racing, and LMU through 2026. I think we're definitely going to find a lot of leagues move in several different directions. I don't necessarily see it being a case where most leagues are going to stick vehemently to one game over the other. I will see definitely a few leagues I can definitely expect to see running both games at the same time. Then there'll be that transitionary period where one phases out over the other. Indian Goat asking, does Project Motor Racing have Le Mans? Sadly, not at this time. I think that would definitely be something they consider in the near future. There's a lot of those endurance cars involved, a lot of the LMDHs right now. They've even got an LMH. They've got the Le Mans hypercar. That's the Toyota GR010. So they do have at least the ability to get more and more WEC-related content into the game. I mean, they already have the Aston Martin Valkyrie and the Cadillacs and the Porsches that all compete cross-category in the World Endurance Championship. I wouldn't say it's too far off of the table here to potentially consider, much in the same way that they've been able to integrate tracks like Silverstone and Donington just by not including their official names. There is a possible chance in the near future we could see Le Mans, but definitely not called Le Mans or Circuit de la Sarthe, because that is very clearly now over in the hands of Le Mans Ultimate. I don't think they're going to be parting ways with the central theme of their whole game. Yeah, the no Ferrari 499p thing is a little bit sad, I will say that much. But again, they're on an exclusivity contract with both Le Mans Ultimate and iRacing. Ferrari has a fantastic relationship with iRacing. A lot of their newest products end up in the game first before any other. I think they got undercut this time by Le Mans Ultimate just existing, but I think the plans were always to put the 499p in iRacing first. They just got beat to the punch by LMU. Ferrari, though, I mean, they've been notoriously hard to negotiate licensing with. I mean, look over at Need for Speed, for example. It took them decades to get Ferrari back on their side. And even then, it's a very shaky agreement between the pair of them. This is no different for this game. Looking into the available cars for the game's car list, Ferrari is noticeably absent. They're not in the GT3s with the 296. They're not in any sort of cup car category with the 296 Challenge. I mean, they've not even got the 550 Maranello GT1 that was developed by ProDrive for the GT category that would compete alongside cars like the Murcielago, the DBR9, and the Saleen S7. It's because Ferrari is very strict, very, very strict. They care quite a lot about where their cars get used and who they give the licensing to their cars out to. I mean, they are now a notorious figure for how strict they are with the representation of their vehicles, even in the physical world as well. I mean, all you have to do is take a few Google searches to see the amount of times that Ferrari's kicked off at someone for modifying their cars. But it's a tough grey zone there, because Ferrari's well within their rights to do so. It is their product. But then you get into the moral grey zone where, say, for example, someone buys a second-hand Ferrari and then modifies it, and Ferrari can technically cease and desist them, even though they never legally signed off with Ferrari themselves. So that's a tough grey area, but less so on that, more so on the topic at hand here, which is still the overarching race lead for White Doctor. Now, with 7 minutes left to go in today's race, as he crosses the checkered line to start one more lap, that will be the last of today. Only 10 laps. I mean, it doesn't seem like a lot on paper. When you consider these laps rank out at about the low 8-minute mark per lap, that really does play quite a heavy hand in how long this race has been going on for here. An hour and a half, and it has really felt a lot longer than most hour-and-a-half races we've covered here on TRTN, just because of the enormous nature of the Nürburgring. It is a very long track, the largest freestanding dedicated racing course on Earth. In fact, I'm pretty sure it's about... Now, this is the rough maths of it. I think it's about 2.3 times. Actually, it might even be 3.2. I might have got the numbers mixed around there. 3.2 times the size of the Circuit de la Sarthe. So it is a tremendously big track. So right now, cutting away from the leader to have a look at the rest of the field. With the fastest lap right now, Elite Cassie looking to secure a few extra points on top of that second place finish. Big Green Man won't be arguing at all with where he stands on track, but ooh, it was a bit of trouble for him there on his way in towards Wipperman, I should say, on the exit of Hedvigshöhe. Temporary yellow flags out at the moment, though, and looking further down the audits for the 97, now having come back in to the pit lane. So I think GTR Daily Boy may have just seen the sort of final piece fall into play there on the puzzle that is his race today, and that could see him out in the 97, back into green flag racing then. So yeah, you can see a lot of those gaps now out north of 2 figures. It is a distant one today, and that is really the case with the Nurbugring Nordschleife. It's a fantastic track, but it's very, very easy to get distant very, very quickly. It's why this circuit lends itself perfectly to 24-hour races, as we see, you know, year on year with the Nürburgring 24 hours. It is a big track. So for a short race, it is not too tall of an order to end up with these massive gaps here. I mean, in any other race, this would be aiming up in the range of laps here, especially from front to back. But in the Nürburgring, a lot of these can exist on the same lap to one another. As a matter of fact, that you can see, you only get down to 15th before you actually start seeing laps traffic. So down across the line goes White Doctor. This will be onto the final lap.
The leader is on the final lap now. Give it all you can.
Now, historically speaking, the last time we were here at the Nordschleife was back during the final round of Season 1 of the NLRL Console Endurance Series, and that was at the 6 hours of Nürburgring in a special edition run at the Nordschleife. That has since returned now to the confines of the GP circuit. Most recently, that was won by the 788 of Florian Oxman and Nat Bennett with Bentley at the XCL team. A two-time running victory now for the 788 Bentley in that championship. But what I'm getting onto, the last time we were here, there was a bit of a bizarre issue, and I'm not sure how much it's going to play into today. I think it definitely could still happen, where because of how long the laps are, of course, 8 minutes, in and around the range of about 8 minutes 13 seconds at their fastest. In fact, looking here for White Doctor, let's actually see precisely what has been the fastest today. Getting on board with the leading number 54. Yeah, it has been an 8:13.875 on that last lap, as a matter of fact. It was looking very spry in the few times we caught him over the course of lap 9. Now, as he begins his final run around the Nürburgring here, because of how long it takes, of course, about 8 minutes either side, that maximum race, sort of like race over timer, or session end timer as it's known, unless they've set it, I'm pretty sure still resides at about 2 to 3 minutes. Meaning, for a lot of drivers, they're actually going to find themselves stranded out on track, and their race is just going to end where they're sat. Now, I don't know the validity of this claim, because it's only ever happened once, and that's the entire basis of what we've got to go off of for this hypothesis that it can happen again. But don't be too surprised if that is the case, because that has happened before. It's a bit of a weird glitch with the game, because The moment you cross the line, then it just starts counting that in the background. And then once it gets past a certain amount of time, which is less than what a lap is, unless set differently, it will just end the session, give the full results then and there, with only maybe even say a handful of drivers having crossed the checkered flag at all. In terms of driver of the day, it is a tough one. It is a very, very tough one indeed. Definitely a few nominees are in that sort of pool for driver of the day. I would say the 42 does cross my mind there. Big Green Man to get a podium on his first race into GT3. Of course, we've seen his prowess in the Porsche Cups. This is the first time we've seen him behind the wheel of a GT3 car here in VSR Phoenix, and he is already doing a stand-up job of such. He's played his cards very, very close to the chest here, and he's been rewarded tenfold with that third place so far. Tommy is definitely one that crosses my radar right off the bat. He has clawed his way up through the field to be in that top 5. If he finishes now where he stands, I'd say it is pretty close to being in his hands here in that 66. Having a look at some of the other cars here, I mean, Otzi is one that does spring to mind as well. A good result for Nissan. It's definitely been a muddied race for Nissan across the board. You can see the other two cars, the 4 and the 44, 15th and 16th. So it is a tough one to say. Honestly, I think I'm teetering in the direction of the 66. Tommy has had a really clinically precise race. He has clawed his way through the field there, thick and thin, to put himself in a top 5. That is really quite a job well done, but he's still got one more lap, so let's not rule things out too early here. Smiler into the pit lane in the number 32. He comes into the pits here. Not entirely sure what the reasoning is behind it. He is coming to a stop though in that 36. So for Otzi, he's currently down the dotting on his way to Antonio Spucher and Tiergarten, so he'll be looking at a potential move to 7th place here. So onwards and upwards for Nissan. Of course, Otzi competed in the gold category last season, remains in the top echelon of the scoring system for Season 10. He'll be joining plenty of other drivers here in a record high number for the Premier category. He finds himself up in the Pro division now in what has been a reduced to a sort of binary system for Season 10. We've moved away from the era of simply gold, silver and bronze. Now we find ourselves now in the Pro and Am era. Now, I am curious to see how that unfolds once we get some times on the charts, once we get some sort of points on the charts more relevantly, as we are now officially on to that final lap. I'm curious to see how this is going to unfold, because it's going to make, yes, 2 championships with a lot of drivers. It's going to make 2 much harder to fight for championships. I think one of the beauties of the bronze division was it gave what were otherwise rookies to ACC a real fighting chance. Are they going to have anywhere near as much the opportunity to come along and contend for championships, let alone good results in division in the AM category when there's almost half the grid involved? It is a tough one to say. Right now, having a look as to where the leading AM car is concerned, I believe it is to be the number 32 here of VSR Smiler. Now I have to double check. Yes, he is in the AM division, so he will be looking at a division win today here in the Nurbugring. I'll have to catch on board with him in a little while's time, as not too far out here from seeing the arrival of the 54 to the checkered flag. That'll be White Doctor winning in round 1 of Season 10. A little bit more of a tepid start to the season. I think that has been brought on by the fact that Nürburgring is a track you really do have to wrestle with to even get a lap in. So for a lot of these drivers today, it's been less so fighting with each other, more so fighting with themselves. The next one will absolutely be better. I do have that right assertion there, and I'm not the only one alone on that. We can see Mr. Bernie in chat saying next one will be better. No doubts about that one. 45 minutes of Brands Hatch. It's an airtight circuit. Brilliant for side-by-side racing. It's got quite a lot of history in the world of British motor racing. It's now a prominent location for touring cars. So I've got a lot of hopes that that track is going to provide some real theatrics. It did so last season when it was one of the opening rounds of Season 9. So there's a lot to look forward to in the next coming round. It's been a much more of a relaxed, would one say, starts to the championship. I'd definitely say this has been a bit more of a methodical drive than the drivers were expecting right off the bat here. It's a lot less side by side when we get down towards the checkered flag. It's more so survive, get the strategy nailed in. But I think this is a good way of breaking them into some of the more compelling things coming up later down the line in this championship. This is not going to be the only endurance round. We find the next one coming up actually towards the end of our 2025 leg here on December 17th. That'll be at the Grand Prix Circuit Kyle Army. So they're being broken in very early to these new regulations, these new event structures. And that's going to give them a little bit of a better insight running into the next couple of races. And there you can see exactly what I was talking about has now happened. That final lap counter has now given us a decisive answer on the winner of this race. And so it seems there, after the race seemingly cancels itself early, the checkered flag has come out, but has not yet greeted any one driver. The 54, as you can see right now, is actually at the Hedvigshøj. Not the Hedvigshøj, sorry, it's at Galgenkopf. That's my mistake, not Hedvigshøj. Is at the Galgenkopf section here onto the Dottingerhøj, but is still yet to actually hit the checkered flag. White Doctor, seemingly before even having crossed the checkered flag, has won here in the Nurbugring. We'll try and see if he can race against the session end clock here to get to the line and actually confirm that here and now. But you can see there is the result on your left-hand side, unless anything changes. It is a bit of a bizarre one, I will say that much. And as a matter of fact, just to aid any notes taking for VSR Phoenix, we've just took the liberty there of print screening that result. We'll be sending it over towards them for analysis. But looking down towards the line here, I think he's just managed to nick things against the session end timer. So we will actually see him down across the checkered flag. And it has been a brilliant opening round here from the Season 8 champion. Now looking to get back onto a form to potentially become the second ever multi-time champion here in VSR Phoenix. It starts from today as winning in round 1 of Season 10 is White Doctor in the number 54. Moving away from Aston Martin over to BMW, a gamble worth taking for the 54 today. Elite Cassie in second, Big Green Man on his first GT3 race in VSR Phoenix in third place. A great result for the 42 today. Tyler Vermack in a reluctant fourth after his penalties. Tommy, with driver of the day, gets fifth place in the number 66. Regent in sixth place. A good turnaround for the 420 despite less than ideal circumstances for him today. VSR Somala in 7th, OT in 8th, Jayco 9th. A great turnaround for him as well, might I point out. He was quite towards the back of the field, but he's really surfed that one back. I'd say had we known sooner, he would have been also in the consideration for driver of the day. That is a great hustle from Jayco 14. He's 9th. And VSR Funky Fish in 10th place. Twiglet 11th, Chris in 12th, Antion 13th, Dollar Up 14th, Shawnee Mac 15th, Grizz 16th, Daily Boy 17th, and Boy Shay in 18th, Indian Goat, Jonathan Curran, and Didinho, your 3 DNFs here out of round 1 of the championship. A bit of a confusing end, a bit of a confusing start, but nonetheless, that was something, definitely quite something. I can't say that it has been the most graceful start to the season, but I would be maybe perhaps a bit naive to say that I wasn't also contributing to that. A little bit of a rocky start for us here, but that's because we had to work against emergency circumstances to get this round underway. Didn't start on the kind of preferences we were hoping for, but fortunately has since ended. We did get through the full length of the event, which is something you can always walk away from with a smile. That's the end of round 1 of the championship. Your race winner then in the Pro category is White Doctor. Your race winner in the AM category is VSR Smiler in the number 32. So BMW victorious all around at a circuit they've dominated for decades here at the Nurbugring Nordschleife. That's all from us here on TRTN. A wonderful result then, and very well done today to White Doctor, returning to the top step of the podium. And well done to Elite Cassie and Big Green Man, your other podium sitters in today. And also very well done to the 32 VSR Smiler, your AM division winner for this round as well. That's all from us here on TRTN. Have a wonderful rest of your evening. Take care and good night.